Good afternoon and welcome. It's Monday afternoon. You join me on a, pretty miserable afternoon, really. Well, it's not so bad, actually. And we're in the final lesson. Can you believe it? Lesson 4 of this. I'm just moving my screen around there. Lesson 4, we're going to be looking at if. We're not going to be recapping in the video. You can do that in your own time. But we're going to be looking at the if function, count function, and variations of if. We won't be looking at a logic test as well. I'm going to get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. So let's have a look then at the if function. Just make this a little bit bigger. And we're going to talk about what it actually is. So we're going to use the if function to see whether the money we spend in sales is within budget, and our budget is over here, £4,000. And if it's within budget, or if we're lower budget, we want it to display within budget here. And if it's over budget, we want it to display over budget. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use the if function. So I'm going to click into the within budget and I'm going to use the function for this. I'm going to type in here, search for the function. I'm going to type for if. And it will now come up with the if criteria. So here's the if function box. So if, what's our logical test? Well, our logical test is if this cell here, B4, is less than or equal to F4, and remember, because that's a cell on its own, we're going to make that an absolute cell reference. Well, what's the value if it's true? Well, the value if it's true is within budget, and the value if it's false is it's over budget. And you'll notice that it puts the speech marks, because this is text, it puts the speech marks around it. If I click OK, we can see now that it's over budget. If I look at the formula and do a logic test, we can see that if I click on the logic test, if this cell B4 is less than or equal to F4, and it says it's false there, the value if it's true is it's within budget. If it's false, it's over budget. Then I just copy this formula down, and that's the if function. You see, we can see that's quite handy, and you could conditionally format if you wanted to do that. Let's just check on the sales. Let's just put that now to 4,000, and that should now change from over budget to within budget, and we can see that that changes. So that's good. So there's a practice one for you to do here, and then there's also a completed one there, and then there's a completed one with what the formulas are in there. The if exercise 1, there are 40 scenarios on here, I think, that go down. Let's just freeze them panes. Let's remember how we freeze panes. I'm just going to go into B1, go to view, freeze panes, and now when I scroll up, we can see that the top row stays the same. So what we've done is, here's the scenario. It's giving you some sample data, and it's asking you to put your formula in there, your function in there. This is what it should look like, and then there's also the completed version there. If you remove this box, I'm just going to left click on the box. You can drag that away, and then you can find out the answers should you wish. So you can have a go at them. There's similar ones on here as well. Now we're going to look at what's nested if. What happens if we need more ifs? And you can have more than one if. So for example, we've got some people who've got some salesmen, staff, women, salesmen. Not very PC, that is it, but we've got salespeople. They've completed some sales, and then they get some commission based on how many sales they have completed. And depending on their sales that they make, depends on the commission rate. So if we look at the formula, the function, here we can say that if this cell, B5, is less than or equal to 10, then that's 10%. And now what we've done is we've then put a comma in and we're using another if argument. We're saying, well, what happens if B5 is greater than 20? The answer is going to be, what's the true answer for that is 20%. And the false answer then would be what's left is 15%. So we can see that how that's made up. Let's look at an example for John now. Let's type this in. So this is equals if, open brackets, the logical test if it's true. So the logical test is if B6 is less than or equal to 10, the value if it's true is 10%, comma, and the value if it's false, and we're going to put another if argument, if, open brackets, B6 is greater than 20, comma, what's the value if that's true? Well, the value if it's true is 20%, quotation marks. And watch what happens now, because that's a true value. When I put a comma in, it'll go to the false value. So the false value is 15%, close quotation marks, close brackets on that one, close brackets on that one again, and then press enter. So that's 10%. And if I just carry that down, we can see that it now adds them all in. So for example, if John went up to 25, we should see that now go up to 20%. So that's one way, and there's a practice one here that you can do. There's also the commission rate, and then there's one here that's got all the completed tables in it. Nested if functions, so again, there's some exercises that you can do here, and we've got the solutions for you there, so you can have a look at them, so you can have a practice on the nested if ones there. We're going to look at the COUNT-IFULA now. The COUNT-IFULA, these are instructions for this. So COUNT-IFULA is on this sheet, and it's asking you a number of different things. So here we go. Use an if formula in column E to work out the vampire rating. If they drink 10 pints or more blood a week, they're rated as monsters. If they drink less, they're rated as veggies. So as we go back to here, what we need to do is an if formula based on how many pints a week they drink. We could just go straight to the function key here. Because we've used if before, I'm just going to click if function. Now it comes up and it's going to ask us for our logical test. So what we're going to do is if this cell D5 is greater than or equal to 10, the value of that is they are monsters, and the false value, the negative value, is they are veggie. Click OK, and we can see that Dracula is a monster. If I now just fill that down, they'll come up with the different ratings there. We're now going to use the count function, and there's various different count functions that we can use. Count, counter, counts, count blanks, count if, count ifs. Okay, so we're going to use the count if function for these ones, and count and counters for different things here. So in here, we're going to go to the functions key, look at count if, and press return. And we've got count ifs and count ifs there. Count if and ifs. So I'm just going to click count if. And again, the range, we're going to look for the range that we're going to look for is here. And the criteria that we're looking for is A. Okay. And we can see that 5 have come up there. Now I could, if I wanted to, put these as absolute cell references. So F and F4, so the F4 key, F4 key. I could now copy these formulas down, and you see it's still 5 in each one because it's looking for an A, but I just go into the formula and change the A to a B. And in here, change the A to an AB, and in here change the A to an O. And you can see it's now counted how many of the different vampires are different there. Yeah, no, we're going to use COUNTIF. FX, COUNTIF, and the range is there, and the criteria is monster. Okay. Oh, and not monster, monsters. And now it's come back with 7. And here again, the FX key, COUNTIF, and the range again, this, and the criteria is veggie. So COUNTIF is quite useful. In the I12 cell, use counter to count the number of vampires who owned up to a favourite blood group. So here we go, blood type. We can go to the function key, counter there, the criteria is this one, and then I'm going to press enter, and it comes up with 14. So 14 vampires owned up to a favourite blood group. Pints per week, we're going to use the count function to count the number of vampires who owned up to the amount they drunk each week. So counter counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty, and count counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So this again is going to be FX, and we're going to type in here count. The criteria is pints per week, and then we can click OK, and then it comes up with 12, and we can let them all move to the middle. Okay. So that's that done. There is an extension task here that asks you to look at a FANG rating, and that's using the rank function. And if you're interested in that, please have a look at the completed one, and you can see that the format for that question is there. You'll see that it brings up some error messages, but then if you are interested, there's a completed one here that wraps this function in an if error. So that means if there's an error in here, so before it come up with NA, if there's an error, we've put in there that it likes to be, we're going to say that it's not ranked, and that makes it a little bit tidier. But don't worry about the FANG rating, only do that as an extension task if you're interested. Again, if you wanted to, you could go to the functions key, you could go to rank, and it would come up with the rank function, and then you could put the details in there. And remember, these boxes tell you exactly where it is that you need to be looked at. Okay, and as I say, you can put the function in there for it. Right, let's look at the shop sales now. So this is a shop sales one. Again, this is a good idea if you got something like this to freeze panes. So we'll go to the B2, click on view, and then freeze panes. So we can see now that I've frozen, and that's better. Please don't worry about these prices. These are just made up because these are just generated and put in for me, but we need to change them to currency. There's no way that we would pay £425 for a mouse. So we know that the total, well, that's going to be equals the unit price times the quantity sold. Okay, and that gives us a price there. I can, if I wanted to, just double click that, and it'll put all the values in there for me. We now need to decide if we're going to have a reorder level. And we're going to reorder if the stock is below or equal to the reorder level. So we can see the function is there. So we're going to say equals, And again, we could use a function key if we wanted, or write it, and I'm going to use if. If the logical test, well, the logical test is if this cell G2 is less than or equal to this cell. Well, the value, if it's true, is we're going to reorder. We're going to say yes. And if it's not true, we're going to say no. And we can then see it comes up with, we're not going to reorder there. Carry them in that way. Now we're going to look and say, well, what's the reorder cost? Well, the reorder cost, we're going to use an if function here to look and see, well, if we need to reorder, if this is yes, then what's the value if that's true? Well, the value if that's true is we're going to multiply the reorder level by the unit price. And if it's not true, we're just going to use two quotation or two speech marks, and that then will return a blank value. So this is, and we can use the if key, again, function. So if this cell equals, and we need to put these in speech marks, yes, and we need to do it the value if that's true, well, that's going to be the reorder level multiplied by the unit price. And the value if that's false is I'm just going to use two speech marks, and then that will come up with there. So there's nothing in there, so that's false. But if I now double click that, put that down, you can see that it's putting a value in there for me. So it's only selected the values that we want here that have put up yes. And again, we could remember we could conditionally format these so that we can say conditional format cell rules. If it's text that contains no, we're going to make that red, and if it's text that contains yes, we can make that green. And again, that makes it stand out a lot easier for us, and we can see that we've got a reorder value, we've got these that we need to reorder. So that's one way that we can do that. And there's a shop sales here completed, so you can have a look at that. If we now look at this one, well, we've got two different criteria. We've got rose pens there. Again, we've got the unit price. Let's all put these into currency. And the total, well, that's going to equal this cell multiplied by this cell. Press enter, bring them down. And it's interesting because we've converted these into currency, it's automatically converted them into currency. And now what we've got is if something is popular, or if it's partially popular, or yes. And what we want to do is, and this is an extension task really, we want to see, well, if our reorder level, we're going to reorder if our stock level is lower than or equal to our reorder level, but also we're going to order if it's popular as well. So we can see here that we've got a stock level that's 32, a reorder level that's 14, so we're not going to, and it's not popular. But here we've got a stock level of 34, a reorder level of 19, but it's popular, so we want to reorder. So how are we going to do that? And what we're going to do is we're going to use it as we're going to use an if or function, and we can't use the fx function this way, I don't think. So we're going to have to make it up ourselves. So we're going to say that's equals if open brackets and then or open brackets. So and now it's asking us for our logical one, logical two. So logical one is if this cell is less than or equal to this cell, comma, the logical test now, or this cell equals yes. Okay, then comma, then close parenthesis. The value, if that's true, well, the value, if that's true, is yes, we're going to reorder, but I need to put that into speech marks, comma, and if it's false, it's going to be no. Close brackets, and then press enter. And you can see that we're not going to order there. And then I just copy that down. So we can see now, if we just look here, if I change this to popular, this now should reorder, tell me to reorder. So I'm going to change that to yes. And we can see that that's reordered. So just Control and Z. Likewise, if I change this to 14, again, it's changed that. So we've put two criterias in there for it. Again, now for the reorder cost, we can use our fx function this time if we wanted to, because we're going to, if the logical test, this cell equals yes, I'm going to put that into speech marks. The value, if that's true, well, that's going to be the reorder level multiplied by the unit price. And the value, if that's false, well, we're going to put two speech marks there, or two speech marks. Then click OK. So you can see we've got nothing in here, but now if I double click, we can see these ones come up with our reorder value. And again, if I change this one from yes to no, the reorder value should go because we're not reordering. There we go. And it changes that way. So that's quite handy. Hopefully you found that quite interesting. Lots of different things that you can do there and see, but just have a play around with the formulas and just play around with it as and well as you want. Okay, brilliant.